Okay, welcome to part 6 of the Roaring Twenties. This time we're going to talk about the Scopes trial. Now, this time period here in the 1920s, we start to see some exploration in what was known as a modern morality, right? Charles Darwin wrote a book in 1859 called The Origins of the Species. The Origins of the Species put forth the theory that the human race had actually evolved from other animals rather than being created through some kind of divine intervention, right? So this is going to come in direct contrast with creationism, the idea that God created Adam and Eve, right, and that all man comes from there. Darwin is saying, no, we have this system in place on the planet, right, where things with the best attributes will survive and things with attributes that aren't that good will die off, and we evolved, that we came from apes, right? Now, because these two are in direct contrast, you're going to have a lot of fighting that develops out of this. Even in the church, the Protestant church is going to split over this issue. Some of the Protestant church are going to become modernists. They're going to say, look, these scientific ideas can coincide with the church and the teachings of the Bible, because we need to remember that the Bible is about the morals of the story, right? It's about the lessons to be learned from it, more so than the specific word-to-word accuracy of the story itself. But on the flip side, you'll have another group called fundamentalists. Pentecostalism is an example of this. They go, absolutely not. The Bible is word for word, exactly as it said. This was written from God. There cannot be a single word about this that is wrong. Right? A lot of states in the U.S., including mostly in the American South, but including the North, are going to pass laws that is going to make it illegal for you to teach evolution in schools, right? Which is going to be pretty problematic when you teach things like, well, say for example, biology, and you have to try and explain the genesis of animal species, but yet here you can't talk about this idea of evolution, which was the predominant science of the day, which of course is going to lead us to a very famous court case. In 1925, in Dayton, Tennessee, which is nowhere Tennessee. Trust me, if you ask me where it is on a map, I would tell you it's in Tennessee, right? It's a small town in Tennessee. A substitute teacher by the name of John Scopes, who was teaching biology, decided to use a textbook that taught evolution. And he did this on purpose. They were looking for a reason to challenge the law in Tennessee, making it illegal for you to teach evolution, right? The whole idea was to challenge this law. So he is arrested for teaching evolution in violation of the Tennessee law, right? In order to defend them, they're going to make this a public spectacle. They bring in the best defense attorney that you can buy that you can get at this time, a guy by the name of Clarence Darrow. Clarence Darrow is the Johnny Cochran of the 1920s. He's the most prominent lawyer of the day. He's very talented. He thinks outside the box, right? For example, he is going to defend two New York boys named Leopold and Loeb, who had decided as they're in their late teens, they decided, I wonder what it would feel like to kill somebody. And so they lured a 12-year-old boy away from his home and they murdered him. Now, in that case, one of the boys, I think it was Leopold, if I remember right, dropped his reading glasses there at the site where they hid the body, right? And when they did the investigation, they found that prescription for those reading glasses were very unique. As a matter of fact, only 2 people in the state of New York had those reading glasses, that prescription, Leopold and an 80-year-old woman in upstate New York, right? Obviously, she didn't lure a 14-year-old kid off and killed them, right? So this is a pretty open and shut case. Clarence Darrow knows that these boys are going to die if he doesn't do something. He doesn't think he can get them off. So what does he do? He thinks outside the box. He tells them, I want you to plead guilty. I want you to plead guilty by reason of insanity. This way there's no jury. And then the judge himself is the only person who will decide sentencing. If you let a jury decide sentencing, you're going to go to the gas chamber, right? So it works. They get long prison sentences instead. One of them was killed in prison, but the other one by 1950 will be released. right? So now here he is defending John Scopes. But the prosecution has a ringer of their own. This guy, William Jennings Bryan. We've talked about him before, right? This fantastic speaker, 4-time presidential candidate. Remember, he's the Buffalo Bills of presidential candidates. 4 times he ran, 4 times he lost. Okay. He is a self-described expert on the Bible, fundamentalist on the Bible, believes it's all true. Okay. He delivers a very elaborate, eloquent, great prosecution and case against John Scopes in what becomes a national spectacle. Everybody's following the Scopes trial in little nowhere Dayton, Tennessee. Everybody's interested. He's got all these famous names, right? It's getting a lot of national attention. Okay, gives this great prosecution presentation. It's Clarence Darrow's turn. He comes up. And he says, I would like to call for a witness, the attorney for the prosecution. And he's like, what? Well, William Jennings Bryan says he's an expert on the Bible. And I need an expert witness on the Bible. I have questions. So the judge, because this is really unusual, but remember, this is also Clarence Darrow. The judge asked William Jennings Bryan, are you willing to be an expert witness? And Bryan, unfortunately, agrees. Right? Unfortunately for Bryan. Darrow begins to question him. Begins talking him and trying to talk him in circles on the Bible. And of course, William Jennings Bryan is responding. He's got expert knowledge of the Bible, and he is parrying each of Clarence Darrow's thrusts with ease until they finally get to the idea of the creation of the earth itself. And Clarence Darrow says, let me see if I got this right. You mean in 7 days? 6 days, actually. 6 days, he created everything, not just the earth, but the sun and the stars and the universe and the Milky Way, all this different stuff. No wonder he needed the 7th day off. Right? How could he possibly, I know he's God, but how could he possibly do all of this in just 6 days? And William Jennings Bryan's response is, you need to realize that the length of the day for God is not necessarily the same as the length of the day for you. Right? It could be an eon, an epic. It could be a millennia. Clarence Darrow pounces, goes, whoa, wait a minute. Bryan has fallen into Darrow's trap. He says, hold on a second here. You mean to tell me that even though it says 6 days in the Bible, it might not be 6 days to you and me? Bryan's sensing the trap, but he has to acknowledge, yes, that is exactly what I said. So that means it is not actually word for word correct. Is that right? Bryan has to concede that point. Well, if it's not word for word correct here, where else might there be a problem? Maybe with the creation of the first 2 humans, Adam and Eve. And of course, the courtroom erupts, right? The judge even has to threaten to clear it. And ultimately, Scopes is found guilty. And he has to pay a $100 fine. And the outcome of this is, pretty unimpressive. But it was the spectacle that counted. And it was the spectacle that everybody got. Clarence Darrow had won it. He had won the argument, at least, even if he had lost the case. Right? And William Jennings Bryan was crestfallen about this embarrassment that he had been submitted to. Right? So much so, in fact, that he'll never leave Dayton, Tennessee. 5 days after the ending of the case, while he was still in Dayton, Tennessee, he is going to have a heart attack and die. Some actually argue that perhaps he died of a broken heart.